Let's talk about comparing integers first. When we say the word compare, and we're in math, and I want to compare 5 and 8, what does that mean? If I want to compare 5 and 8, I want to know what? Ethan? I want to know the greater number, which means I want to use what type of symbols? Peyton? Greater than, less than, or equal to. So, this is our greater than sign. It's where the opening is first when you read from left to right. Then we have our less than sign, where the point comes first. And then we have our equal to sign. So you will use one of those three symbols to compare numbers. It's going to be really, really important that you guys learn how to read it. That way you're not always just saying the opening is eating the bigger number, like however you learned it, like the alligator eats the bigger number, whatever phrase you learned in elementary school. Have to be able to read the problems in order from left to right. So if I give you this example, I have 5 compared to 8. Should my answer be greater than, less than, or equal to? It should be less than. So when they're both positives, that's the easy one, right guys? We're used to when they're both positives. What if I have one positive and one negative? Answer that one for me. If I have 5 and negative 8. 5 and negative 8. Would that be greater than, less than, or equal to? Good. Positive numbers are always bigger than negatives, right? Okay? Those are usually the ones students don't have any issues with. The ones students get confused is when they're both negatives. For instance, I could have negative 5 and negative 8. Greater than, less than, or equal to? Why? Who can explain to me why negative 5 is greater than? Owen?
It is closest to the 0.
Excellent. It is closest to 0. Would anyone like to add on to his explanation? That is a perfect explanation. It is closer to 0. So when we talk about negative numbers, whichever number is closest to 0 on a number line, or it's the smallest number, right? 5 is smaller than 8, isn't it? That's the bigger number. Questions on comparing it all? Those are the only 3 types that you'll see. Obviously, I'm hoping that if I were to give you something like this, what would the answer to that be, everyone?
Equal to.
See, I'm hoping we would know that answer. So, any questions on how to compare? All right, let's go to ordering. When I say ordering integers, what do I mean by that? Natalie? Excellent. So this is putting them in order from least to greatest or greatest to least. So let's do some least to greatest examples. Then I'll read off the numbers, so try to listen and write at the same time if you can. Are we ready? Okay, 5, -6, 7, 16, -12, 0, 12, -2. I'm going to read that again, so check and make sure you have all the numbers listed. 5, -6, 7, 16, -12, 0, 12, and -2. Do we have them all listed? Okay, so if I want them in order from least to greatest, least means what? The lowest number, the smallest number. Are my smallest numbers positive numbers or are my smallest numbers negative numbers? Negative numbers. So I want all of my negative numbers to come first. So everyone underline all of your negative numbers. What numbers do we have underlined? -6, -12, -2, right? Out of those three numbers, which one is the smallest? So which number should I write first? And then once I write it, what should I do? Cross it off, because we all make those mistakes where we forget a number. It's not that you don't know what you're doing, it's that we accidentally leave a number out of our list, or we put a number in that's not in the list. It happens all the time. Which number should come after -12?
-6.
So write -6, cross it off. What number comes next? Write it down, cross it off. So when it says least to greatest, do all of your negatives first. What always goes in the middle of negatives and positives?
0.
So make sure if there is a 0 in the list, once you get done with your negative numbers, you write down 0. So what am I left with now? Positives. This is the side people don't usually have issues with at all. It's the negative side people have trouble with. So what should come after 0?
5.
So write it down, cross it off. What comes next?
7.
Write it down, cross it off. What comes next?
12.
Write it down, cross it off. And last,
16.
write it down, cross it off. I know the crossing off may seem like annoying, but I promise you it'll help you out. That way we don't accidentally miss a number. Questions on ordering?
Is it important to put commas between the numbers?
I would, yes. Great question. I would put commas between those numbers, otherwise it looks like we've got some really big, weird looking numbers. So commas, semicolons, something that separates all of your numbers. Put in between. Great question. Any other questions on least to greatest? Okay, let's do greatest to least now. Greatest to least is the one students have the most issues with. Most people can do the least to greatest, but greatest to least tends to confuse people. So once again, I'm going to read off the numbers as I write them. Try to listen and write as I say them. So here we go. 24, -13, -7, 18, 9, 3, -2, 1. I'm going to read it again. 24, -13, -7, 18, 9, 3, -2, and 1. So if it's greatest to least, what does that mean? The biggest number comes first. So our biggest numbers, positives or negatives? So underline all of your positive numbers. because those are the numbers that have to come before the rest of them. So I want the greatest number to come first. What is the greatest number?
24.
So I would write 24 and I would cross it off. Put a comma. What comes next?
18.
Write 18, put a comma, cross it out. What comes next?
9.
Write a 9, comma, cross it out. Next,
3.
write a 3, comma, cross it out. And what comes last?
1.
Write a 1, comma, cross it out. What do you notice I don't have in this list of numbers?
0.
So if I don't have a 0, do I need to write 0?
No.
No, it's not there, don't write it. But now I need to write all of my what type of numbers down?
Negative.
Negatives. So here's the tricky part. Which negative should come first?
-2.
Why -2?
Because it's the closest to 0.
Good, it is the closest to 0, which means it's larger than the rest of them. So -2 has to come next. What comes after -2?
-7.
Because that is the next number that is closest to 0. And then last,
-13.
-13. Questions?